In the world of UFC, fighters rise and fall in an unpredictable whirlwind. But when it comes to a potential showdown between Khamzat Chimaev and Dricus du Plessis, DDP, for the championship title, the stakes are set to be astronomical. While Chimaev's meteoric rise has already caused waves across the mixed martial arts (MMA) world, the prospect of him facing DDP for the UFC title has some fans and analysts concerned that the result may not be as thrilling as expected. In parallel, Conor McGregor's disdain for Ilia Topuria has been palpable, as has been mocking the rising star for what he calls Topuria's copycat moves. This dynamic could have serious repercussions on both the future of the lightweight division and the reputation of UFC champions. Let's dive into how these developing storylines could spell disaster for the UFC as a whole. Khamzat Chimaev's journey to UFC stardom has been one of the most exciting stories in recent years. From his debut to his rapid ascension through the welterweight and middleweight divisions, Chimaev has captured the imagination of fight fans worldwide. His seemingly unbeatable nature has turned him into one of the most talked-about fighters in the promotion. However, as thrilling as his rise has been, Chimaev's path to the top could ultimately become a disaster for the UFC, particularly if he were to take the title from Dricus du Plessis. Chimaev's style is aggressive, and his submission game is brutal. But what does it really mean for the UFC if he were to win the championship? Some critics argue that Khamzat's rapid ascent and lack of a truly tested record at the highest level could be a risk for the sport. Would a title victory at this stage be viewed as legitimate, or would it be seen as a rushed decision that undermines the credibility of the promotion? Chimaev's victories have often come quickly, with his imposing style overwhelming opponents before they can truly challenge him. While this is impressive, it also raises questions about his ability to go the distance in a 5-round championship fight. The lack of truly competitive bouts against top-tier opponents may lead to concerns about his durability when pushed to the limit. A fight against Dricus du Plessis would be his biggest test yet. Du Plessis, a powerful and methodical fighter with incredible conditioning, has proven that he can hang with the best of them. If Khamzat were to win the title, there might be a sense that he wasn't fully tested and that his rise was too fast. This could leave fans questioning the legitimacy of his reign and whether he's truly the best of the best or merely a product of timing and hype. Khamzat's hype train is fueled by his dominant performances, but what happens when it hits a bump in the road? If he were to claim the title from du Plessis, would the UFC be left to face a champion who hasn't faced the necessary adversity to solidify his legacy? Chimaev's own words have often shown a hunger for greatness, but his critics suggest that the UFC might be setting him up for a fall. What happens when the hype surrounding a fighter collapses? The UFC could be left with a champion who was crowned too soon, leading to a potentially disastrous situation where the promotion has invested heavily in someone whose title reign doesn't have the gravitas fans expected. On the other side of the equation is Dricus du Plessis, a fighter whose career trajectory has been one of steady progression. The South African middleweight has steadily gained a reputation for his grit, conditioning, and explosive finishing ability. For du Plessis, a title shot against Chimaev would not only represent the culmination of his efforts but also a chance to prove that he is the real deal in the middleweight division. His journey has been nothing short of impressive, and a title fight against Khamzat would give him the opportunity to show the world that he belongs at the top of the UFC. What many overlook when discussing Dricus is the level of his skill set and the sheer difficulty of his path to the title. While Chimaev has often been seen as the heir apparent to the middleweight crown, du Plessis has quietly outperformed many of his contemporaries, including wins over high-caliber opponents like Robert Whittaker. His more traditional approach to fighting, relying on skill, discipline, and mental toughness, sets him apart from the chaotic and explosive style of Chimaev. For du Plessis, a win over Khamzat could cement his place as one of the true champions in UFC history. But the stakes for du Plessis go beyond just the title. His victory could reshape perceptions about what it takes to be a UFC champion. Should du Plessis secure the middleweight title, it would represent a victory for consistency and patience in an era of hyper-accelerated ascents. The UFC could benefit from a champion like du Plessis, who is not only a skilled fighter but also a dedicated athlete committed to the grind of mixed martial arts. If the UFC were to promote a champion like du Plessis, who has paid his dues and faced challenges head-on, It could send a message to the MMA world that a fighter's journey matters more than quick ascents or hype-based titles. This could be an important step toward a more grounded and respected future for the sport. While the Chimaev versus Duplessis scenario plays out, Conor McGregor's ongoing feud with Ilia Topuria adds an entirely different layer of intrigue. McGregor, a man who has built his career on brashness and controversy, has been vocal in mocking the rising star Topuria, calling him a copycat. Conor McGregor's presence in the UFC is undeniable. His legacy has forever altered the trajectory of the promotion, and even in the latter stages of his career, McGregor's words and actions still command attention. His insults toward Topuria reflect his characteristic bravado, but they also provide insight into McGregor's perception of the current state of MMA. McGregor has a history of dissing fighters, whether it's for their style, their persona, or their moves. Topuria's recent success has certainly caught McGregor's eye, but it seems McGregor doesn't think Topuria is doing enough to differentiate himself from others in the featherweight division. Topuria, for his part, has responded by stating that he is not concerned with McGregor's comments and is focused on his own career. However, McGregor's mockery could create a heightened sense of rivalry that propels both fighters toward more significant showdowns in the future. While McGregor may see Topuria as a threat or simply a competitor looking to copy his moves, Topuria's journey has been one of remarkable progress. His rise through the ranks is marked by clean victories and an exciting, aggressive fighting style. McGregor's dismissive attitude, however, could be an indication that he is worried about Topuria's potential to dethrone him or create an issue in the featherweight division. As the UFC continues to evolve, the dynamics of the divisions continue to shift. The potential coronation of Chimaev, the rise of Topuria, and the ongoing story of McGregor all contribute to a larger picture of where the promotion is headed. In many ways, the UFC is at a crossroads. Fans are constantly looking for the next dominant fighter, but there is also an increasing demand for underdog stories. Fighters like Duplessis and Topuria offer a glimpse into a future where champions aren't just picked for their hype but for their undeniable skill and resilience. As the UFC continues to evolve, the dynamics of the divisions continue to shift. The potential coronation of Chimaev, the rise of Topuria, and the ongoing story of McGregor all contribute to a larger picture of where the promotion is headed. In many ways, the UFC is at a crossroads. Fans are constantly looking for the next dominant fighter, but there's also an increasing demand for underdog stories. Fighters like Duplessis and Topuria offer a glimpse into a future where champions aren't just picked for their hype but for their undeniable skill and resilience. If Chimaev were to defeat DDP and claim the title, the UFC may be caught between catering to the hype machine and keeping the integrity of the sport intact. The promotion will need to navigate how it builds fighters, ensuring that hype doesn't outpace actual accomplishments. As for McGregor, his mocking of Topuria may end up being part of a much larger legacy. McGregor has been one of the sport's most influential fighters, but has also walked a fine line between self-promotion and undermining the legitimacy of others. How the UFC handles these dynamics will shape its future as much as any fighter's ability to win a title. If Khamzat Chimaev defeats Dricus Duplessis and captures the UFC middleweight title, the immediate reaction from fans and media will likely be electrifying. Chimaev is a polarizing figure. His brash attitude, smothering fight style, and mystique make him a perfect headline grabber. But beneath the surface, concerns linger. Chimaev is undeniably marketable, but he also brings unpredictability, not just in the octagon but outside of it. From missed weight cuts to erratic social media behavior and strained relationships with other fighters, Khamzat isn't exactly the most stable or dependable figure to build a division around. For UFC President Dana White, Chimaev's championship reign would be both a gold mine and a headache. He has global appeal, especially in Muslim-majority countries, Eastern Europe, and Russia. But will that appeal last if he fails to fight consistently? If his performances grow sloppy under pressure? Or worse, if he finds himself embroiled in controversies that overshadow the sport? If Khamzat dominates DDP in quick fashion, the middleweight division could grind to a halt. Fighters like Sean Strickland, Jared Cannonier, or Marvin Vettori may not provide the stylistic challenges that make for compelling matchups against Chimaev. On paper, they may all be tough competitors, but none have the star power or grappling credentials to present a genuine threat or storyline. This results in a logjam, a dominant champion with no clear challenger, leading to stagnation in a division that has historically thrived on chaos, rivalries, and upsets. He's hinted multiple times about his dissatisfaction with fighter pay, visa issues, and even semi-retirement. If he were to win the belt and then disappear, due to injury, political issues, or internal frustration, the division would be left rudderless. That would be an organizational nightmare. Interim titles, delayed fights, confusion over rankings. We've seen this before with Khabib Nurmagomedov and others. The UFC may end up regretting fast-tracking a fighter who isn't fully committed to the long haul. Chapter 6. Dricus du Plessis, the unlikely hero. Nonetheless, Prince Harry remains firm in his belief that his actions have been motivated by a desire to protect his family and speak his truth. He has frequently emphasized that much of what he and Meghan endured while inside the royal system was hidden from public view, and that their decision to go public was a last resort. For Meghan, the question of whether to release her receipts remains unanswered, though the mere suggestion continues to provoke speculation about what she might reveal, and whether doing so would come at an even greater personal or reputational cost. In the midst of this ongoing saga, one thing is clear. The relationship between Prince Harry and Meghan Markle and the British royal family remains deeply fractured. While there are signs of quiet diplomacy between Harry and his father, the broader family unit appears to have adopted a wait-and-see approach, hopeful, perhaps, for healing, but no longer intimidated by threats of further revelations. As for the Sussexes, their future in the public eye may well depend on how they balance their desire for privacy with their ongoing engagement with the media. If they continue to revisit royal grievances, they risk being seen as one-dimensional figures, defined solely by their fallout with the monarchy. But if they shift their focus more decisively toward advocacy, innovation, and community work, they may yet redefine their legacy on their own terms. Only time will tell whether the bridges Prince Harry has begun to rebuild will hold, or whether the specter of past wounds will prove too heavy a burden for reconciliation. What is certain, however, is that the world will continue to watch closely, reading between the lines of every statement, every appearance, and every so-called receipt that may or may not come to light. In contrast to Chamave's chaos, Dricus du Plessis represents structure, grit, and consistency. He might not be flashy, but he's dependable. He's methodical in his preparation, articulate in interviews, and slowly earning the respect of even the most skeptical fans. The idea of du Plessis as UFC champion carries weight far beyond rankings and belts. South Africa has never had a UFC champion. His success could ignite a continent-wide boom for MMA, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, just as Francis Ngannou's rise brought attention to Cameroon. The UFC has long stated its ambition to grow its brand in Africa. With DDP, it would finally have a real ambassador who isn't just African by birth, but also by presence, someone who trains, lives, and breathes his culture. That opens up commercial opportunities, international cards, and expanded market share. Du Plessis wasn't fast-tracked to the title. He climbed the ranks through sheer will, taking on dangerous fights and proving himself over and over. His war against Robert Whittaker, arguably one of the best middleweights in UFC history, solidified his legitimacy. And his cardio, near unmatched, is not just a paper champion. He's a blueprint for what championship material looks like. If he beats Khamzat, it won't be due to hype or favoritism. It will be because of discipline, game planning, and execution. A DDP victory would be the UFC's reminder to fans and fighters alike. There's no shortcut to greatness. While the middleweight division stays with chaos, the featherweight and lightweight scenes have their own drama, namely, the war of words between Conor McGregor and Ilia Topuria. Topuria, the undefeated Spanish-Georgian phenom, has been making headlines with his thunderous performances, culminating in his stunning knockout win over Alexander Volkanovski. Now the reigning featherweight champion, is eyeing bigger paydays, and perhaps a leap into McGregor's division. McGregor has accused Topuria of copying his fight style, media approach, and trash talk persona. And in some ways, he's not wrong. Topuria walks with the same confidence, delivers similarly concise but cutting promos, and enters the octagon like he owns it. But isn't imitation the sincerest form of flattery? McGregor's comments likely stem from more than just annoyance. They may be rooted in insecurity.